This conference will now be recorded.
So before starting today, any questions, anyone so far? Okay. So yesterday we just started understanding as part of the Salesforce development training what we are going to discuss at high level. As a Salesforce developer, okay, so one of the prerequisites is we should know the administration, Salesforce administration basics. At least you should know. So what is object and the fields, the relationships, those kind of basics we should know. Okay, so if you know those basics, you can understand development in a better way. Okay, so just understand that. And as part of the development, right, the platform as a service offered by Salesforce, that platform we call as Force.com platform or Salesforce.com platform. Okay, so people say Salesforce.com platform or Force.com platform. That's the development. Salesforce, they maintain a server where whatever the code, whatever we develop, everything will be executed in the development server, whatever Salesforce offer. Okay, technically it is Force.com platform. Okay, so as part of this platform, we work as a full stack developer. Full stack means, so when you see any application, starting from the UI, right, the web page, what we see in the screen, right? When you open any application, so what we see here on the web page, this is UI. We work on developing the UI, and also when you click on somewhere here, right, so internally some logic will execute, right? So the business logic, what it execute in the background, so that also we need to develop, and also the database, saving the information into database or retrieving the data from database. So we also need to work on database commands. Okay, since we are working in all the areas of the development, we say it's like we are full stack developer. Okay, so already at high level as part of the UI, so what we need to know, already we discussed yesterday. And as part of the business logic, we use a programming language called Apex. Okay, if someone asks what is the programming language used for Salesforce platform, we use Apex, one of the programming language which is similar to core Java. Okay, so not exactly the core Java. The syntax looks similar to that. Okay, it's not that we should already know Java or some programming language. So as part of this training, we understand this Apex language from the basics. Okay, and also we need to know about the database commands. Okay, so to start with, first we are starting with Apex. Okay, so this is the main thing we should know first. Once we know the Apex programming language, the syntax, so once you know the concepts, how we develop, then we can understand the other things. Okay, so to start with this programming language, Apex, one of the first point, the Apex programming language is case insensitive. So meaning, so if you see, this is one example. Even though there is a change in the case, system treat this both as same. So that behavior we call as case insensitive. But the other programming languages like Java, .NET, those languages are case sensitive, but Apex is case insensitive. Just understand that point. Okay, and also before start writing a program, so we should know the terminology, right? So on day to day, to I think this is for this is for especially people from civil, mechanical, and other background. So So I think they don't know what is a program and the basics also. So for them to understand, so if you compare with the day-to-day, let's say English, right? English is a language, right? It's a natural language which we speak so that other persons can understand. But the programming language is, that is also language, but it is a technical language which can be which system will understand, right? So if you want to compare and understand easily in English, right? So we say paragraph. So here one paragraph is like one program, right? Here we say program. Okay, so in a paragraph, how we form the paragraph? With the sentence, right? So we write the multiple sentences to form the paragraph, right? So here in program, instead of sentence, we call as statement, right? So multiple statements we write, and that becomes a program. Okay, maybe when you write the sentence, right? Each sentence, how we end each sentence, maybe we use full stop, right? Okay, so here in program, each and every statement, to say that the ending of the statement, we use a semicolon, right? Like that, some slight differences are there, right? And also how the sentence will be formed with multiple parts, right? So here, each and every word what we write in a program, technically we need to call as a token. Okay, here we say tokens. And also when you say a word, that can be either verb, right? So maybe adjective, noun, or something, right? Different types of words are there, right? So here also, each and every word what we write in a program, we can call that as a token in a generic way, like a word. But the token can be a keyword or identifier or string or literal. There are many things, right? Already I showed yesterday. And also in the process of framing the sentence, right? So we need to follow the grammar in English, right? So if you don't follow the grammar, the sentence won't give the proper meaning, right? So here in the program, okay, so while forming the statement, we need to follow the syntax. Okay, here instead of grammar, we call as syntax. Just slightly the terminology, the way how we call is different when we deal with a program. Okay, so just to understand these things. So maybe, so most of you already you know, but this is for the people who don't know anything about a program. Okay, so just think like that and understand. So now, so to start with, right, before start writing a program, right, when we try to learn English, right, so how we start? So first we know each and every word and try to frame the sentence. There are different types of sentences, right? So compound statement, I mean, different types, right? We combine multiple sentences with and, because, if, there are many things, right? In the same way, when we write the statement, there are different types of statements when we write a program. Okay, so first I'm just listing out most common types of statements which we write in a program. So already we have listed, and we started with memory statement. Okay, so the memory statement, the purpose of the memory statement is to store the, to allocate the data, to allocate the memory for the data what we deal, right? The purpose of writing any program is to do some calculation, to do some automation, right? So one of the best example on day to day, we use calculator, right? So we can also do the manual calculation, but maybe based on, so person to person, they might calculate wrong, they might take very long time. But when you automate that, let's say if you use calculator, right, all you need to do just enter number and use plus minus. It will take care of giving the accurate result, right? So when you enter some numbers, where that data, whatever you are entering, will store. Whatever data we enter, that needs some memory. Okay, so how much memory you want to allocate for the data, that we decide using a memory statement. Okay, so instead of allocating the same memory for all the different types of data, so we have a concept called data types. Using data types, we can instruct the system how much memory it should allocate, right? It's not that all type of data needs the same amount of memory. So for example, Boolean, true or false, it needs very less memory, right? So when you are dealing with a text, let's say you are typing a big paragraph, it needs more memory, right? So based on the data on day-to-day what we deal, so that much amount only it should allocate so that we can utilize the memory. For that, we need to use the memory statement. Okay, so here when we say memory, it's so on day-to-day, if you use laptop, so our hard drive 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte, whatever, that is a memory, right? So here when I say this memory statement, we are allocating memory, it's not going to store in that. Okay, so along with our hard disk, we also have RAM, right? Random access memory, 8 GB, 12 GB, or 16 GB, whatever, based on our laptop. So whatever the applications we open in our system, to run these applications, whatever we open after starting the laptop, to run these applications, all these applications need some memory, right? Which is temporary, right? So once you shut down your laptop, that it will be gone. Again, you need to reopen all these applications, right? So here when you are allocating the memory, it allocate the memory, the allocated memory will be used only when the program start executing, right? So let's say if I close my browser, right, this Chrome browser will stop using the memory from my RAM, right? So only when I open this browser, to run this browser, it needs some memory, right? It will take that memory from the RAM, the 3 GB RAM or whatever I have. Okay, so here also same thing. Okay, slowly you'll understand that point. So now, so first we need to know the data types. Already we discussed. Yeah, kind of I'm repeating at high level. So these are the different data types. So what we deal. Okay, so these are different data types. Already we discussed. So we have blob. If you want to store any kind of file, we use blob data type. Boolean, it holds either true or false value, and so on. All these things already yesterday we discussed. Okay, so now here, whatever the data types listed, we call these data types as primitive data types, right? So primitive data type means whatever the memory we allocate, right? One of the example, to store a number, right? So data type integer space, right? We need to give the name for the memory, right? So when you allocate the memory, so let's say we need to allocate memory for number 1 and number 2. So if you don't give any name, right, both are integers only, how I refer, right? Let's say I want to subtract number 2 from number 1, or I want to subtract number 1 from number 2. To recognize the memory whatever we are allocating, we need to give some unique name in a program. Okay, so that's why we give some name. This is in our hands. As a developer, we decide what is the name you want to give. Okay, so here in this example, integer, that is the data type, we need to give the space and the name what you want to give as a developer. So that name we gave here. And also, right, it's not that you need to assign something. If you want to assign something, right, it's like when you allocate the memory, it's like a empty box, right? So do you want to keep any default value in that box? Yeah, you can equal and give some value. And do you want to replace that value, right? You can open that box, remove and keep something else. That is possible, right? This one later you can replace this number 1 value with something else. So like that. Okay, so and also if you see, this is one memory statement. The statement we end with semicolon. Okay, otherwise system won't accept. It will throw error. Okay, so we need to follow the syntax, right? Just so as per the syntax, right? As per the rule. So we have to end this statement with semicolon. Okay, in the same way, number 2, right? So assign 60 and this is one more memory statement, right? And also one more thing, once we slowly start writing the program, it's not that every time we need to say integer and some name like that, right? I know that this number 2 is also same type integer only, right? Instead of defining here and again integer defining here. So what we can do, if you want, okay, so we can also keep like this, right? I'm saying integer space, with integer there are 2 values, right? Maybe no need to give any default value if you don't want. So we can enter, right? This is also valid statement. Okay, either you can define separately, or anyway both are of the same type of memory we are allocating. So we can say comma and we can mention. Okay, this is also one of the valid statement. Okay, just we need to just understand, with some practice you will understand these things. Okay, and integer, this one also, if you want to keep here itself, you can keep. Okay, so like that. So this is the syntax. Okay, and also let's say I want to store the name of a person, right? So which type we need to use? The name of a person, it's a text, right? For text, so here we use string, one of the data type, right? Say string. Okay, so what you want to store? Name. So I want to store first name, last name. I can say first name, I can say last name, like that, right? And ending of the statement, semicolon, right? With the same type string, we are allocating 2 memory locations. So for the first location, for the first memory, whatever we are allocating, we are giving the name as first name. The next one we are giving the name as last name, like that. Okay, sorry. So, and if you want, you can also give the default value equal to and give some value. So that is possible. And also now I want to store the, let's say, salary, right? The salary of a person. So which type we need to use out of this? So what do you think, anyone? We see these are the types, right? So mostly when you deal with a number, we go with integer or we go with decimal, right? Sorry. So we deal with either integer or we deal with either decimal, right? So it's like that. Okay. So um, so for salary in general, right? It should be a rounded number. We don't get like 50,000.50, like, right? Either 50 or 60 or whatever. So based on the requirement, so we decide as a developer which type is better, right? Which type is suitable, right? Salary, in general, salary you get in a rounded value. You can say integer and I can say salary, like that, right? So let's say you want to store, okay, some expense, right? You need to claim for some expense in company. It can be, let's say, $100.50, right? When you submit the bill in bill, there is $100.50, something like that. So that time, to hold that, it's better to go with decimal. We need the decimal digits, right? Say decimal, say expense, something like this, right? Like that, we need to think and mention the type, give space and give the name. Ending up the statement is semicolon. So like that. Okay, so just understand these things. And also when we start working for a project, especially, okay, so don't try to give, right? When I say, let's say I'm giving integer x, y, right? So if you give like this, right? We don't know what we, so if you store some value in x, what is the purpose of the text? We don't know, right? If you see this salary, we have some idea, right? So here what we are going to store, I think we are storing the salary of a person. Okay, so when we work for a project, we need to give some meaningful names. Okay, so if you give technically, this is correct. If you define like this x, y, z, abc, that's correct. System will store and do calculation, it gives the result. But as a experienced programmer, right? So maybe here we have only 5 lines. So when we start developing a project, we need to write over the months, years. You see the code becomes 1,000 lines, 2,000 lines. So that time, if you give like this, while analyzing the logic, it's very difficult as a developer to understand what is happening in the program. So that's why always as a experienced developer, so we need to make the habit to give the name of the memory with a meaningful name. Okay, so we should give the meaningful name. So don't try to use abc xyz like that. Okay, so even though you use like this, it might work, but the other person who has some experience, they say some fresher, someone wrote the logic, something like that. Okay, so try to follow these standards. So mostly we follow the standards and develop the logic. Okay, so that's about one point. And also I told that Apex is case insensitive, right? So let's say here I define the num1, right? Or instead of integer, instead of capital I, if I give like this, also it will work, right? If you give like this, also it will work. Here I defined as number 1. So while referring, if I refer as like this, it will work because it is case insensitive. So, but we don't do like that. Okay, so we follow some indentation, right? So we say indentation. Indentation means the programming standards. Okay, even though you don't follow the indentation, still the program will execute and give the proper result. But if someone see your code and if you don't follow the programming standards everyone follow, the other person, they take lot of time to understand, and it becomes like a hectic process. Okay, even it's not that in the project every time we start writing the program from basic and complete, right? So when you join in a project, you need to continue with existing logic, right? If some other developer, if they don't follow the standards and if they define something in a bad way, we also face problems, right? In the same way, when we develop in a bad way, the other person will face the problem. Okay, that's why as a experienced developer, everyone mostly they follow the standards. Okay, when I say these standards, indentation, technically if you don't follow this also it will work. But if you follow, your program, your code will be very clean. The other people think that some experienced developer developed and it's looking good. Okay, so indentation means the standards, right? So it's always better to, when we define the data type, start that with the capital letter. If you see integer or string or decimal, wherever I am defining, I'm starting with the capital letter and the remaining letters are small. So we need to follow that standard for all the data types. Okay, so data type start with capital letter and remaining characters small letter. That is the standard. And for the memory, right here, whatever the memory we are allocating for the data type. So here, while giving the name for the memory, whatever we are allocating, we need to use camel case format, right? Camel case means the starting letter should be small letter. If there are multiple words, so the first word should be all in lowercase. The starting of the second word should be in capital. It's like that, right? So let's say, let me define one more, right? String. So my first, something like this variable, I'm defining like this, right? So if you see, I'm starting with, this is one word, right? So all in lowercase. This is the next word that should start with capital letter. The third word, again, that should be a capital letter. So like this. Okay, so just so understand. Okay, so this is the data type, and these are the characters. So if you follow this standard, it is good, right? So just try to follow these standards slowly based on the next concepts. I'll also show you what are the standards we need to follow. Okay, so before we continue further on top of this, so here technically every time I am saying integer, right, number one, if you want you can also assign some default value. All these things are there, and I'm saying this is the data type, this is the memory name given to this, and this is one more memory location name, right? So technically people don't say that this is a memory location name, something like that, right? So what we call this, technically what we call this, right? So if you see in a program, each and every word what we see in a program is a token, right? Token. Everything what you see in a program is a token. Integer is a token. Num1 is a token. Equal to is a token. This is number is a token, right? Everything is a token. Okay, but token can be a keyword or identifier or operator, right? There are different types of tokens. So in this program, right, let's say in these statements, whatever we have here, so integer, right, whatever integer we define, whatever string we defined in above statements, so maybe the decimal, right, all these things, right, all these tokens, technically all those are tokens, all those here integer, string, all these data types, we call these things as keywords. Okay, so when we call a token as a keyword, the token should be provided by the system, and that should have a specific meaning already. If you see all these data types, integer, string, decimal, all these things are provided by system, right? When you say integer, you can only store the integer value, right? So I cannot store this, it won't take, because integer means only the rounded number, it won't accept the decimal, right? If I give some text, it won't take, right? So like that. Okay, so integer means always it accept the rounded value. String means string can only accept some text. If I assign some number directly, it cannot take, right? So the tokens which are provided by system, which we cannot change the meaning, so those things we call as keywords. Okay, but if you see here, integer num1, who decided this name, right? If I want, I can also give like this. As a developer, I can decide what should be the name of that, right? So these things we call as identifiers. Okay, so to identify the memory whatever we allocated, as a developer we are giving the name, it's in the developer hand. So those things, those kind of tokens, right, we call as identifiers, right? In the above program, number1, number2, result or salary or whatever expense, everything, x, y, my variable, all those things are identifiers. Okay, so we decide as a developer, so those things we call as identifier. Okay, and also in day to day, when we write the program and when we deal, so if you say identifier, right, if you see number1, number2, all these are the identifiers, right, the name given to the memory. If you say identifier, maybe some people cannot understand. Okay, so there are different names for this. Okay, so here this one we also call that as data member. Okay, maybe when you write some technical books and all, you see data member, right? So data member means it holds some data, right? So this hold some data, so data member. But this also people cannot understand. On day to day we call this, right, either this one or this name. On day to day we call this one as variable. Okay, people say variable, num1 variable, num2 variable, right? So the name what we give for the memory, so we can say identifier or data member, or mostly if you say variable, people can understand. This is the day-to-day terminology. So in all these statements, if you say number1 is one variable, number2 is one variable, result is one variable, first name, last name, salary, expense, all these are the variables. Okay, that's the day-to-day terminology. You just understand. Going forward, I'll say, I don't say memory name, something like that. I say variable. Right? Variable means the name given to the memory, whatever we are allocating. Okay. So that's the variable, right? So just understand that point. Okay. So now one more thing what I want to explain. So we discussed about indentation, right? Indentation means some standards. If you don't follow also it will work. But there are few things which we should follow. Okay, the name, whatever the name we give for a variable. So valid, I'll say valid variable names, right? I'll say invalid variable names. Okay, so when you give the name for a variable, you have to follow some rules. Okay, otherwise it will throw error. Okay, so one of the rule, variable can have number, but it should not start with number. The variable can have number, but the variable should not start with the number, right? So just we should do that. We should know that. Okay, so just the valid value for this, right? So integer number one or whatever, this is valid, right? Invalid. Okay, so maybe here I'll give some number. Invalid part is, so when you give that as, this is invalid. Okay, system will throw error for this. So I recommend you to check practically, so whether this is correct or not. So for that, okay, so once we log into Salesforce, okay, mostly I think almost everyone knows. Okay, some of you, if you don't have the account and you are starting, okay, again, already if you have the account, you have to continue using that account. Okay, no need to again sign up for development. As part of the admin already, if you have the developer edition account, continue using the same thing. Okay, this is for someone who don't have the Salesforce account so far. You can click on sign up and they can fill the details, provide the valid email address. Once you provide the valid email address and the sign up and set the password, you need to go to this website and enter your username and password to log in, right? So once you log in, you'll see like this. Okay, so here as a developer to work, okay, to start with, so we need to use we go with the developer console. It's like a browser based IDE, okay, where we do all the development, the UI development, the business logic, the database commands, everything we can do here. Okay, so open this. So I'm just clicking on the developer console and it is open. So here to check our code, whether whatever we are typing, the code is valid or not, right? So how we say it is valid or not? Syntax. Syntax should be correct, right? So here I'm just showing. Yeah. So integer, I am saying that the variable can have a number. This is valid. If I execute, you see there is no error. Okay, so this is a valid statement. But if I give like this, right, it can have a number, but it should not start with the number. If you see it is throwing error, it is saying unexpected token, right? So it's like that. Okay, so we have to know these rules. Okay, that is one of the point. And the next point, variable should not have special characters. Variable should not have special characters except underscore. but it should not start with underscore, similar to number, right? So example, integer underscore 1. This is valid. Okay, test it here. Num underscore 1. It's valid, right? If you execute, you don't see any error. Okay, this is a valid statement. But what I am trying to say, it should not start with underscore, right? It is invalid, right? So it's like that. Okay, so that is one rule. This is invalid. So the other rule, variable name should not be the keyword, right? Variable name should not be the keyword, right? Keyword means in the above example, above statements, if you see integer, decimal, right? Those are some of the examples of the keywords, right? So if I say integer decimal, right? Let's say I'm saying decimal. It's wrong. If I say like this, yeah, this is not the exact keyword. I'm adding some number, so this is valid. But exactly, right? If I say decimal 1, it is valid because along with the keyword, I'm giving something so that it's not the exact keyword. But if you give like this, it will throw error. Identifier name is reserved, right? So like that, okay? You should know that. And the variable names should not have spaces. Okay, you should not give the space. Okay, so variable name should not have space. Okay, so integer, so num space 1, that becomes invalid, right? Space 1, it will throw error, right? So it should not have space. If I give space, it's a problem. Okay, so just these rules, okay, we should know. Yeah, in general, it's very easy. So just follow these standards and so that you don't see any errors. Okay, anyway, if you by mistake give, it will throw error. By seeing that error, you can correct it and we proceed. Like that we do. Okay, so for sure this we have to follow, otherwise it will throw error. But indentation, if you don't follow also, it's fine. It's like that. Okay, so that's about this part. Okay, and also one more point. If you see all these statements, right? I am saying integer is a keyword, decimal is a keyword, and then these are the variables or identifiers, different names are there. So here equal to, it's an operator, right? If you see, I shared one PDF yesterday to you, right? So we have operators, literals, all those kind of things, right? So here in above statement, this equal to is one of the operator, right? So plus, minus, star is for multiplication. All those are the operators. Okay, literals means numbers, right? In above statement, we have 10, 20. So those are literals, right? So here, so some name if you give, right? So here this is a string. We call this as a string, right? So these are the different types of tokens. If you don't know what to call, you can say token in a generic way. But the token can be a keyword or identifier or operator or literal or string, like that. Just understand So these basics. Okay, so and also what I'm already we discussed, whatever we decided here, the data types, all these things we call as primitive data types, right? Primitive data type means, so once you define the memory, right, it's call by value. That means once you define the memory, right, directly in that memory, right, directly in that memory, the value we can store. Okay, so that, so we call as a primitive data type. Non-primitive means call by reference. Maybe to understand easily, so maybe let's say in my system there is a folder, right? If I have a folder, right, something like this, in this folder I can keep some file, right? This is a file, I can keep that, and directly in that folder it is there. So like that. So when you allocate some memory into that, you can directly put your value. So that is primitive data type. Non-primitive data type, it won't hold the value directly. It will hold only the location of the data where it is, right? So it's like a shortcut, right? So if you see here, when you create a shortcut, I think in Mac, I don't know how to create the shortcut. In general, if you use Windows, we can create the shortcut for this, right? So when you create the shortcut, so that will point you to this location where this is. It will point you to this, right? So really, directly, the shortcut is the location where the real folder is there, right? It cannot directly hold some value. You need to go to that location and keep the values, whatever you want to store. It's like that. So non-primitive is to hold the reference, the location where the real data is there. Okay, so directly we cannot assign the value. We assign the location of the data where it present. So those things we call as non-primitive data types. Yesterday we listed few data types. So we have the object in Salesforce. Object is nothing but a database table. Okay, the objects whatever by default Salesforce provide we call as standard object. The object which we create as per the requirements in the project, we call that as a custom object. Okay, so technically these are the database tables, right? So account, contact, opportunity, those are the some of the standard object. You can define those things as a data type. So when you store, so directly we cannot assign the value, right? So yesterday I showed you by opening an Excel. In Excel there is a data, right? That location we assign here like that. So here we store only the location where the data is present, not directly the value we can assign here. Okay, so these are the non-primitive types. So to understand more, still we need to write some programs, then you can understand more about this. Okay, for now, so high level, all you need to understand, it's like a shortcut. It holds some location, right, where the real data present. To hold that, we use the non-primitive data types. So these types, slowly we understand how we deal. Okay, so that's about this memory statements and what we need to know, the basics. So any questions? So anyone so far, any questions understanding this? So kind of already we discussed yesterday, because if I explain directly yesterday itself, you might not understand. That's why I'm extending this one to understand few more things. So any questions before we start with the other types? Okay, so especially if you are not from the, maybe if you are not from computer science and if you don't know about programming at all, so you can feel free to ask questions. And if you are still not understanding whatever I am explaining, just let me know. I'll try to explain in a better way to make you understand. So far, so any questions, anyone, before we start with the next one? So are you good with whatever we discussed so far? Okay. So the next type of statement. Okay. So the first type is to allocate the memory to store the data for that purpose. This type, the arithmetic and the logical statements. So we use mostly to do some calculations, assigning, right? Some mathematical kind of operations. So we use this arithmetic and the logical statements. Okay. So let's understand this. So as part of this, again, we need to discuss about different types of operators which we use to perform some of the calculations and all those kind of things. Okay. So again, to classify these operators at high level, we can classify these operators. So the first type I am saying unary operator. The second type I am saying binary operator. The third type I am saying ternary operator. Yes, so these are the three types of operators: unary operators, binary operators, ternary operators, like that, right? So three different categories of the operators. Okay, so unary operator means the operator deals with only one value at a time. One value, one operator. When we use that time, we call as unary operator. So one of the example on day to day when we see the basic programs, you see people using something like this, right? So let's say there is a variable integer I equal to 0, right? Mostly when so I'll explain why we use I, J, those kind of things slowly. If you want, you can say count or whatever you want. Okay, so let's say I'm saying count, right? 0. So if you want to increment this value by 1, right? In general, as part of the calculation, we have to say count equal to count plus 1, right? So as a short form, okay, if you want to increment a value, an integer value by 1, so all we do, we use this. Okay, so this will increment the value of the count by 1. Every time when this statement execute, whatever the value is there, for that it will add 1. If this is executed for 3 times, right? First time 0 plus 1, next time 1 plus 1, third time 1 more 1, total 3. So like that it works. Okay, these kind of things we call as unary operators. Okay, so count plus plus, count minus minus, right? So you see plus plus count, minus minus count, right? For the sake of some, if you see exams and all, what is the difference between count plus 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 count? People ask, but yeah, if you know these two, we are good, 99%. These kind of things, maybe in some special use cases, maybe when we write some exams kind of thing, that time people bring all these kind of questions. Okay, so basically this is to increment the value by 1. This is to decrement the value by 1. This is also same, but the thing is what it returns. Okay, so this will be, it will increment the value by 1, but while returning, it will return the original value. Here it will increment by 1, and whatever the incremented value is there, that it returns, something like that. Some differences will be there. So to understand, Okay, so all we need to do practice, right? Let's see how this works. Okay, so for that, once you open developer console, open this open execute anonymous window here. So let's play with that. Okay, integer saying count equal to value 0, right? If I say count plus plus, right, the value of the count will be incremented by 1, right? This is one more statement, right? So if you use 2 times, the value of the count will be incremented by 1 more time, right? So after this statement, right, here the value of the count is 0. When this statement executes, the value of the count will be 1. Here 2. So I want to print. Okay, whenever we execute the statement, system generate the log. If you see here logs, here we can understand how our code is executed and how it is behaving. Okay, so for now I'm clearing the existing logs. Okay, so now I'm going to execute. When you execute, system generate the logs, but whatever the system generated log is there, so sometimes we cannot understand everything in a better way. As a developer, we can write something in the log. So if you want to print something and understand what is the value of the variable what we define, as a developer we can write to the log by writing a statement. Okay, if you want to print something in the log when the code is executed, so here in Apex, okay, so we use system dot debug. Okay, so what is system, what is debug, we'll understand slowly. Okay, for now just try to by heart. Okay, slowly you will understand. So what is this system, what is this debug? So we need to cover a few more basics to understand that. Okay, so to print something, just understand we need to use system.debug, and here what you want to print, the value of the count variable, right? I'm just printing that whatever this variable value is there, that it will print. When this reach this statement, the value of the count should be, here it is 0. After this statement it will be 1. After this 2, right? So that 2 value here we are printing. Okay, let's see. Okay, and also if you want to open the log automatically, we need to check this log and execute so that the log will be opened automatically. So you are seeing this log, right? You are seeing this log. So like that. Okay, so just understand. Okay. So now, so click on this debug only, right? Click on this debug only. So this entire log, I just we need to spend time on seeing everything, right? So whatever we are printing using system.debug, if you want to only see that, all you need to do, you need to check this checkbox, debug only, so that what we printed using system.debug, only that it is showing. If you see here, the value is 2, right? So that's correct. Okay. So now, so what I will do, so here I'm incrementing the value by 1 more time, right? Here 0, here 1, 2, here it will become 3, right? So execute and see. Okay, automatically it is open. Click on debug only. If you see red, still it is 2. The thing is, it is incremented, but immediately after incrementing, if you try to see that value, it only before incrementing whatever the value is there, that it will print, right? After this statement, if you print, right? If you print this here, right? It can hold the latest value. If you see 3, right? So the thing is, so directly after incrementing, whatever it returns, that should be like whatever the incremented value I want, like that. So that time we use this. Okay, it's like it will increment, and whatever the latest incremented value is there, that it will return. Okay, now you see directly 3. So like that. In the same way, minus minus, right? So I am saying minus minus means it will decrement, and whatever the decremented value is there, it will return, right? First time it should print 3. Second time it should print 2, right? So execute in the debug, PC32. So like that. Okay, so these are some of the examples of the unary operator. So I recommend you to play with these things. Okay, so that you will get more confidence instead of just by hearting and reading. So this programming you need to practice, then only you can get it in a better way. Okay, so that's about the unary operator. One value, right? One variable, one operator. So we deal, that is unary operator. Binary operator means so multiple values, multiple operators. Okay, so one of the example, let's say I'm saying integer number 1, I'm giving the value as 100. Number 2, I'm giving the value as 30. Number 3, I'm giving value as 60, something like this, right? Now let's say I have one more variable, result. In result, right, I'll say number 1 minus number 2 plus number 3, right? So even though, right, so multiple values, multiple operators are there in between, even though we have the huge expression like this, system don't do the calculation for everything at a time. So what it will do, right, first it will add these two numbers, or maybe it will subtract these two and add to that number, like that, right? At a time it deals with the two values and one operator. Whatever the result is there, that will be again added to other one. So system internally take like that and do the calculation. So that's why even though we have the expressions like this, so all these are examples of the binary. Two values, one operator it take and do. So now here the question is, so when you have like this, so first it will subtract these two, and after it will add this number, or it will add these two numbers and after that it will subtract. That's the question. So that one is based on the operator precedence. Okay, so we have minus operator, plus operator, star is for multiplication. There is a precedence, means there is a priority by system, right? In Apex programming language, what is the priority? Which operator is having more priority? System will take that and do the calculation for that first and later do that. Okay, so mostly we don't like to remember that priority, right? So day to day we need to think many things, and even I did not remember. Okay, so since if you don't want to remember, if you remember it is okay. If you don't want to remember, or so my requirement is first it should subtract number 2 from number 1, and after that it should add to number 3. I don't bother about what is the priority. So what I can do, if you use this bracket, right? So first within that bracket, whatever is there, it will do the calculation separately. So the result of that, it will add to that number 3. So now I am clear. I know for sure. First it will subtract number 2 from number 1, and after that it will add to number 3. let's say my requirement is it should add this number 2 and number 3 and subtract. I can give like this. So like that. Okay, these are the some of the examples of the binary operator. Okay, so let's play with this. Okay, just a copy, go to this anonymous block, and I'm pasting. So if you want to align this code automatically, you can highlight the code and you can press Shift tab. Okay, it will align the code. Code alignment is also needed as part of the indentation, right? The programming standard. So now if you see, let's print it and see what is the value of the result, right? System.debug. So what would be the value of the result? Number 2, 30 plus 60, 90. 100 minus 90, 10, right? This value should be 10. You see, right? 10, right? So let's see what is the precedence. I don't know, even I don't know what is the priority for this plus and minus. So let's see the result of this. Okay, so 130. So that means first it is having priority. So if 130, right, that's the result. I think first it is subtracting this 100 minus 30, right? 70. 70 plus 60, 130, right? So I think this is having more priority. First, it wherever minus is there, it do that calculation, and later it is giving priority for plus. So like that. Otherwise, you need to see the documentation and understand like that. Okay. So just I recommend you to play with this. Okay. I mean, simply if you don't want to bother about that, use these brackets. That's the best solution. Okay. So this is one of the example. So any questions on this? Okay. The next one, in most of the programs we use this. You'll be easily using this and these things day to day. 99% we use this. Ternary operator, maybe we don't use very frequently, but we should also know this, and we should use whenever needed. Okay, so ternary operator deals with the three values at a time, 3 operators. Okay, so I mean 2 operators with 3 values. Okay, so one of the example, let's say I'm saying integer. Okay, again I'm saying number 1 100 and number 2 500, something like this. So now I want to check, right? So if the number 1 is greater than number 2, right? If the number 1 is greater than number 2, if this condition is true, so we use question mark, right? After question mark, right? If this is the condition, if this condition is true, so what you want here, that statement we write here. Okay, so let's say if number 1 is greater than number 2, assign the value of the number 1 with number 2. This is what I want. Else, right? If after this condition, true means this one, false, we need to give colon. Here, if it is false, so what I want to assign the number 1 value into number 2, like this, right? So number 1 greater than number 2. So we assign number 2 to number 1. Else we assign number 1 to number 2, like that. Okay, this is the ternary operator, right? So that's it. Okay, just understand this one. Let's see really how it is going to work. Okay, so now I'm just copying, pasting here. Okay, if it is not working, slightly I need to make some change. So let's execute. Expression cannot be assigned. Okay, so I think directly here, so you cannot, so write the statement here. Okay, so now what I'll do, I'm defining one more variable, maximum, let's say maximum number. Okay, so in that maximum number, we are checking this condition. If number one is greater than number two, so number one I'm returning. Okay, this will return number one. Otherwise, I am returning number two. Okay, that way, the bigger value, this expression will return the bigger value. 500 is the bigger value. In maximum number, you see 500. Okay, so let's print it and see system.debug. So maximum number and execute. Okay, so if you see here, 500 is working, right? So it's like that, right? Now if I give this as 1000, this time the maximum number should be 1000, right? Execute and click on this debug only and see 1000, right? So like that. Okay, so when you want to verify a condition based on the condition, if the condition is true, if you want to keep some value, the condition is false if you want to deal with some other value. So in those kind of situation, we use this ternary operator. Okay, so this one, so occasionally we use, but whenever we need, it's better to know this. Okay, so that's about this. Okay, different classifications of the operators, right? Unary, binary, ternary operators, right? So, I mean, these are just the classifications, right? So now let's see the other operators. Okay. I mean, here already we are using plus, minus, equal to, right? So let's really deal with those kind of things, right? Uh, so the first thing what I want to, so these are, as a classifications, unary, ternary, but as part of this again we use assignment, right? Uh, plus, minus, all those things are there. First I want to, so all these are part of the arithmetic operators only, right? So all these are like arithmetic operators. So we're doing some calculations with all these kind of things. Okay. So before to this, what we need to know, the assignment operator. Okay, assignment operator, we used to assign the value. Okay. So when you have two variables, right? Let's say integer number one is equal to 90. Number two, I'm not giving anything, right? Now, how do you assign the value to this number two? right? Do you want to give the new value, right? Number 2 equal to, we are assigning the new value, right? I'm just giving as 20, or whatever the value present in that one I want to assign to this, right? So if you want like that, what we do, we give like this. Okay, if you give like this, while assigning, it's not that this memory will be pointed to that. In this memory, in this variable, whatever the value is there, that will be assigned to this. And that means this number 2 also will have the same value as number 1, right? So that time we use the assignment operator, right? So we cannot say something like this, right? This is a value, right? Let's say there is a box. Inside the box, we keep the content, right? We cannot keep the content outside and the box on top of that, right? So it's like that. So it's like a simple mathematics, how we deal. It's like that only. Okay. So RHS value, right hand side value, will be assigned to left hand side by using this assignment operator. Okay. So just so understand that. Okay. So as part of the arithmetic operators, it can be plus, right, for addition, minus for subtraction, star for multiplication, slash for division. If you want reminder, so all these operators we use. Okay, mostly these operators we use. Okay, these will do different calculations. I can say a plus b, a minus b, or whatever, right? All those things we can do here. So just understand that one. Here already we use, right? Minus, plus, all these things. So these are the arithmetic operators. The next kind of operator is arithmetic assignment. Arithmetic assignment operator. Okay, so the combination of both arithmetic operator and assignment operator we use. Okay, so example, let's say integer number 1, give some value. Number 2, give some value. Okay, so now I want to, right, add number 1 and number 2 and assign that result to number 1. So what we do, say number 1 should be assigned with the addition of the number 1 plus number 2. Say number 1 plus number 2. This is a regular way of thinking. So 79 plus 11, 80, 90 will be assigned here. Now after this, number 1 will be 90. This is a regular thinking, right? So the short form for this, people use shortcuts, right? Instead of writing like this, so what you can do, number 1 plus equal to number 2. Internally, the meaning of this expression is, right? I mean, here in Apex, right, comment we use slash slash. Okay, slowly I'll explain about that. So this is nothing but this. Okay, so if you use this, if you see like this, how we need to understand, number 1 is equal to number 1 plus number 2. So people use the short form like this. In the same way, instead of plus, it can be minus, right? Minus, right? It can be star, it can be slash, right? You can replace with with any other operator, right? So like that. Okay, this is an example for arithmetic and assignment. So let's see really how it is working. Okay, let's see. I'm pasting here. If you want to align, shift tab, it is aligning. So now after this statement, I want to know what is the value of number one, right? System.debug. I'm saying number one. Okay, in the same way, here number two. Sorry, number one only, the same value. So here also I'm printing. Now anyone just tell me, right? This is for commenting. System, this is only as a developer to understand, right? So when you give slash and the rest of the line, system won't execute. Okay, this is for our, as a developer, for our comment purpose. Okay, now just tell me, guess here when it is printing here, what would be the value for number one? Anyone?
90,
90, right?
79, 79.
Here 79.
No, first one.
So this one is 79 or 90?
90.
90, right?
First one is 90.
Yeah, this one here
68.
88.
90
88
minus, right?
minus 88.
88. So how you are saying 88?
66, sir.
66. So
68.
Sir,
Yeah,
68.
68. Sorry.
68.
68.
68.
Yeah.
68. Okay. So how we need to think, right? As a developer, once we start working, you should not look into the original value, right? So this is the value here in this line. The value of the number one is this one. But after this line, right? If you see, you are printing here. You are saying already number one is 90, right? After this statement executed, the value of the number one will be 90.
It should be 79.
So you have to say 90 minus 11, right? 79, right? So at this point of time, the value of the number one is 79. We need to think like that. We should not look into the original value. Okay. So now here again, what is happening? 79 multiplied by 11.
11. Yeah.
So how much? I think
69.
we need to use calculator, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's like multiplication, right? 79 multiplied by 11, right? 790 plus 79, 869, something like that.
869. Yeah.
Yeah. So this should be like 869, right? Let's see, really, this is just for our understanding. We are expecting this. Let's see really what exactly it is printing. Okay, so it's generating the log and click on debug only. Now if you see 90, 79 and 869, I think we are expecting in the same way. Okay, so now what I'm trying to explain, we need to see the flow of the program. It's not the original value always. Okay, after this line, what will be the value, right? After this, what will be the value? We need to think like that and get it. Okay, so this is one of the example using the arithmetic and assignment operator together. Okay, I'm keeping all this for our reference. Yeah, so that's about this arithmetic and assignment operator. Okay, so the next type of operator, especially when we deal with the maths conditions. So we have relational operators. Relational operators. Okay, so relational operators we use for the comparison purpose. Okay, so you see, if you want to compare the equality, so we use a double equal to, less than, right? Less than equal to, greater than equal to, right? Not equal to, we use this, right? Double equal to, less than equal to, greater than equal to, not equal to, right? So either we use this one or this one. So these are the relational operators. And also when we start newly, the basic thing what we need to know, the difference between single equal to and double equal to. Single equal to is for the assignment, right? Double equal to is for comparison. If you want to compare two values, you need to use double equal to, right? If you want to do the assignment, we need to use single equal to, right? Just to show you, I'm saying integer. Okay, I mean for all these examples, I'm saying number one, number two. Okay, slowly we'll understand in a better way how we give the names and all those things. Okay, so these are two numbers. Okay, when you try to print it, right? System.debug. So inside debug, we cannot use number one, number two, number one equal to number two, something like that. That should be a separate statement, and later we need to print. So here, what I'm trying to do, number one, I'm giving double equal to and number two. That means here I'm comparing. I'm not assigning. I'm comparing. Both are equal or not. 10 is equal to 300. No, right? If this condition is true, it returns true. It returns Boolean value, true or false. Both are same, it returns true. Both are not same, it returns false. It's like that. Okay. So just execute and see. Okay. So all these relational operators result in either true or false. Right. So let's execute. So I know it should return false, right? You see it is false because both are not same, right? If I give both are same, now it returns true, right? It's like this. Okay, so the common mistake, so while comparing, people try to use single equal to and right. So do that, right? If you see what is happening, 10, right? So here I'm giving 90 and execute. 90 it is returning, right? The second number it is returning. So this is not comparing, right? This is returning some value. So just understand, if you want to compare, we need to use double equal to. Okay, that's the primary thing. In the same way, you can play with the other operators, less than, equal to, greater than. All these comparisons results in either true or false. Okay, so just understand. So now, if you want to have multiple comparisons, right? So number one should be equal to number two, and also number one should not be 0. I want one more condition. If you want, if you have 2 or 3 conditions and combine, so while combining, you want AND or what you want. Okay, to deal with those kind of scenarios, so we have the logical operators. Okay, this we need to know a few things. Since we don't have more time today, these things we'll discuss tomorrow. Okay, so exactly we don't use R. In Apex programming, we use, instead of R, we use like this. Okay, end means we use the above one. R means we use this two pipe symbols. Not means we use this exclamatory symbol. Yeah, so tomorrow I'll maybe explain few examples how we deal with and or not, all these things, and slowly we continue with the other types of statements. Okay, so we are done for today. So any questions on understanding whatever we discussed so far? Anyone? Any questions? Okay, so I'll share these notes and this recording to you. Okay, just so watch it and prepare, and we'll continue tomorrow. Thank you.